Today, there's a narrative that depicts the Black Panther Party as an unwanted, violent, and anti-government, lawless, anti-white, anti-police hate group that had no legitimate purpose. But today we are here to change this narrative. And by narrative, we simply mean an account of events that is widely believed to be true. As change agents, we must always elevate the counter narrative, which is a counter story. It gives voices to people whose voices are often overshadowed by the narrative that is being told. The counter narrative raises different perspectives. In 1960s, a significant social movement unfolded, marked by non-stop marches and the enactment of the numerous civil rights acts, including the Voting Rights Act. In 1966, law student Huey Newton, a college student, Bobby Seale, both former members of the Air Force, founded the Black Panther Party for self-defense. They established the 10-point plan outlining their goals of self-reliance, community protection, empowerment, and education for activating individual power. The party, initially consisting of 2 members, quickly expanded to include 5 core members and eventually grew to 5,000 members within 2 years, spreading across the country and internationally. The Black Panther Party sought to resist oppression and claim democratic power, viewing themselves as the vanguard leading a revolution for empowerment. On February 29th of 1968, FBI Director J. Edgar Hoover issued a memo to all FBI offices across the nation. It instructed agents to prevent the rise of a leader who might unify and electrify Black America. It also declared the Black Panther Party the greatest threat to international security of the country, in which the Black Panther Party was subject to routine First, Fourth, Fifth, Sixth, Eighth, and 14th Amendment violations. And as you listen today to this evening's panelists, pay careful attention to these lessons about how law and policy was used to neutralize the Black Panther Party years later. Congressional hearings were held, and the world will learn that J. Edgar Hoover's tactics against the Black Panther Party and other groups were often unconstitutional and largely illegal. In the ensuing years, the country has entered into a number of civil settlements with the members of the Black Panther Party, such as Louisiana natives Fred Hampton and Geronimo Pratt. We've also learned that many criminal charges brought were dropped or cases were simply lost at trial. The Black Panther Party was a serious political and cultural force that led to many positives that we still benefit from today. And this is why Ehehosi Bosa has chosen for Black History Month, the 2024, to declare the Black Panther Party Black History Month icons. Panel members, we want to thank you for your service, and it is my honor to yield to you. Please speak your truth today. And now I will pass it off to Summer Johnson, who will be the moderator for tonight.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Summer Johnson, and I will be introducing your panelists today. And I want to again welcome you to an evening with the members of the original Black Panther Party. First up, we will have Mr. Crear. He is a member of the Oakland chapters. Next, we will have Miss Mariama Curry. She is a member of the New Orleans chapter. Next, we will have Mr. Ehehosi. I hope I pronounced that correctly. And he is a part of the New Jersey chapters. Next, we will have Mr. Hunter, who's a part of the New Orleans chapter. Next, we will have Mr. Jennings, who's a part of the California chapter. And finally, we will have Mr. Shakur. And I will give each of them a time to say some remarks before we begin our question and answers with Mrs. Blanton.
Yeah, well, thanks for having us here. And I just had a thought because every time I go somewhere, and a young person will come up and they'll say, "Thank you for your service. Thank you for all you did." But it's important, like I tell them, I want to thank you. So I want to thank all y'all, because if the youth are not continuing the struggle, then everything we lived for, died for, went to prison for would be for nothing. And so I'm answer some of the questions like, why did you join? I joined at the age of 19, and people ask, well, what was the reason? And this it's a combination of things. I was born during segregation when the everything was white, uh, but you were insulated by your community. You had strong black communities, but as a kid, you experienced racism, but you didn't know because like you were insulated. And I'll give you a few examples. Uh, the park here, Herman Park, which is like a central park. They had a zoo across the street, but you couldn't go to the park. Or they had a thing, was like a kids amusement park, had a small roller coaster, uh, Ferris wheel, but you couldn't go there. Your parents had to tell you no. Or I remember being downtown at a department store. They had this uh, they used to have cartoons in the afternoon for kids where they had this woman, she was called Kittering. She wore black leotards and, stock, and she was old. So we were in the store and she was giving out balloons. So me and my sister, we went over there to get a balloon and she looked at us and she just turned her back on us. My mother was pissed and we started crying because we didn't know what was going on. So, and then also the mind of black people. I mean, this is a story I'm going to tell you is of sexism and a little racism. My father was going to school to be a doctor. When they were all at the hospital, when we were born, they didn't know it was going to be uh, twins. But my father's mother, now he's going to school to be a doctor, she wanted a white doctor to deliver us. And when they came out at first, my sister was born before me. She was pissed. She started beating the doctor in the chest. And when they came out and said it was a boy, she gave him a hug. So the mentality of us back then, even like I remember one Christmas, they went shopping for my sister and my cousin, and they had these dolls called Chatty Cathy dolls. You pull the string and say, "Hello, I'm Chatty Cathy. What's your name?" Well, they found a black one. They could only find one, a black Chatty Cathy and a white one. Well, they gave the white one to my cousin, gave the black to my sister, and she started crying. So, I mean, just the mentality of us then. So, we made progress and we came up to, we moved to California. So, I saw the civil rights movement. And then, of course, you came to Black consciousness. Just like in my high school, we walked out twice. The first time for 2 days. The second day, we took over the administration building they called the police. Then we walked out again the next year on Martin Luther King's birthday to say that we wanted to not go to school. We want to honor Martin Luther King. And I remember the principal came outside, but we were all outside. And he was a nice man and white man. And he started crying. So eventually he agreed we weren't going to have classes. We'll go into the auditorium. So these are some of the things that, you know, infused me. Then when I went to college, that's when I started getting, even in high school, when 41st and Central happened, when the party officer was raided, I went to all the, we did school and go to the rallies and that kind of thing. And then when I got to college, I went to Cal State Northridge. It was in the San Fernando Valley. I mean, we were very active. In fact, we had a little cadre in my dorm room. We had a sign on the door saying the Che Lumumba Party. So we were very active. We formed a program where we took over 200 kids for summer camp, things like that. And that's when I started really getting involved with the party, I went to political education class, and I started doing uh, community work. And I started selling papers every weekend when I would come home with Comrade James Palms. We would go downtown LA and sell papers. So just like we talk about the COINTELPRO, one day I was at home, I'm in my bedroom, and my mother comes in and she says, Ricky, that's my family nickname. She says, two white men in the living room. They're from the FBI and they want to talk to you. And I told Mama, look, don't play with me like that. Don't. She said, no, I'm serious. So I'm thinking all kind of, well, what the hell they want to talk to me for? And so I go in there they are, they showed their badges. First question was, are you a member of the Black Panther Party? I said, no. And then they pulled out a thick book and they had all these pictures, you know, this person, that person. So finally, this would really made me proud of my mother. My mother stopped them. She said, y'all are asking all these questions. She said, I have a question. She says, J. Edgar Hoover says that the Black Panther Party is the greatest threat to the internal security of the United States in the history of the United States. So she said, what about the mafia? So then they kind of backed up, and so they start pulling off this salt and pepper thing. The first one said, oh, well, you know, Panthers, they do a lot of good things. You know, they got the breakfast programs, clinics. Then the other one said, yeah, but you know, when they talk about that violence. And so, but when they left, this has really pushed me over the edge because I always was thinking about joining the party. When they left, they walking out the door, and they turned to me and they said, John, you stay in school, you graduate from college, you get you a good job, and you'll never hear from us again. So I'm thinking, man, these motherfuckers trying to tell me if I just lived a straight and narrow life, that, you know, I would never hear from them again. And so that really pushed me over there. And I came to Houston for my grandmother's funeral. And everywhere I went, I would look for a Black Panther Party office. And it was, I'm going down Darling Street at the time. It's called Emancipation now. It was a sign. And it said People's Party too, but it had two Panthers on the side, each side of us. I stopped and uh, I got acquainted with the comrades. And that's when I decided to join. And we went up to Oakland that same summer to ask to become official chapter. And uh, they agreed. And we were so proud when we came back to take that sign down and put up Houston chapter of the Black Panther Party. And so that's really the reason I joined. And like you asked about the roles, I mean, everybody had, one thing was hard work. You know, everybody had, I mean, you talking about just like with the breakfast, you getting up at 5:30 in the morning, going preparing breakfast. And then after that, you went into the field. And when I say go in the field, you might went sold papers, collected donations. Uh, one of my assignments was to go around because see, one of the things the party said, if you're making money in the Black community, then you need to give back to the Black community. So one of my assignments was to go around to the stores and solicit donations. You didn't have to give money. It was some stores would give a couple of cases of eggs or a couple of cases of orange juice and that type of thing. So that's how one of the ways we were able to sustain the breakfast program. And then one thing about the programs, it brought us closer to people because we were being portrayed as these thieves, these criminals, and that's why I try to emphasize to people we came from the community. We were just like anybody here. We had mothers, fathers, sisters, brothers, uncles, aunts. We came from the community. We were just a bunch of young folks, and we were all young. That was it's time to make a change. And so the programs brought us closer to people. I remember the Houston Post, they came in our neighborhood in Fourth Ward, and they interviewed all these elderly people around by our office, and they were shocked because all of them had positive things to say. And one of them, this woman said that we were angels sent from heaven because she said we fed the kids, we came and checked on them every day. Because one of the programs we had was safe program, Seniors Against a Fearful Environment. Well, we checked on the seniors, and we would come pick them up the first of the month because unfortunately you have people to prey on a week, and we would take them to cash their checks, take them to grocery shopping, to the bank, and that kind of thing. So everybody, it was one of my comments. Ayana, one day we were on a panel. In fact, Billy S. was on a panel, and somebody asked, well, "What was it like being a Black Panther?" And I had all kinds of things going through my mind. And so she was the first one to answer. She said it was hard work. And I said, damn, she right. because even at night, every facility we had, somebody was up because of the harassment of the police. So you don't work all day, and at night, everybody would pull a 3-hour shift. So you sleeping good, and then somebody would tap you on the shoulder and say, "Hey, it's your time." So it was always somebody up in any facility that we had. Uh, and then the income, one of the questions was income. We had zero income. We lived communally. Uh, some of the comrades stayed at the office, and we had a couple of apartments, especially kids. See, we had kids, so we had apartments just for somebody watched out for the kids during the day. This is in Houston, and in Oakland we had the Child Development Center, which was for babies and toddlers, and then of course we had our school. And so it was no income, but we lived community. We took care of each other. I mean, we were well clothed, we were well fed. Sometimes we get really tight, you know. But and then the laws. Somebody was asking about getting the laws here in Houston. And it's a book which everybody should get. It's called The People's Lawyer, Bobby Caldwell. That was our lawyer here, and he did most of them pro bono. And Bobby, the thing about it too was back. Bobby graduated from Texas Southern, and and the thing about the party, just like you see people talking here, this is over 50 years ago, and Bobby was close to us all throughout time. And I remember sitting down with him. He was saying how hard it was to be a lawyer in the 60s. He said because all the judges were white, all the prosecutors were white, all the court reporters were white. And so he said it was hard. But he won quite a few cases. He said after about 2 years, this judge asked him, told him he was a hell of a lawyer, and asked him, would he like to have coffee with him? And Bobby told him, no, I don't want to have coffee with you. He said, you should have asked me a long time ago. And anyway, that's the kind of person he was. And strong person. He did a lot of stuff pro bono. And I mean, some cases, I know it's time, but I just want to tell you about this one case. We mentioned Charles Boko Freeman earlier. Well, he was in front of the office changing the tire. And so the police came and they arrested him because it's a city ordinance that you cannot work on a car in the street unless it's an emergency. Well, that's changing the tire. They said he was working on the engine. So they arrested him in front of the office, and then when they got him downtown, they planted a box of marijuana on him. So he got a charge for marijuana. And we were really worried because the prosecutors wanted to give him 15 years and 1 day, because in Texas, if it was over 15 years, you couldn't appeal it to the state court. So we're in the courtroom, and so he had this. But one thing too, they never returned the car. So first thing, Bobby said, try to find that car. He said, go to all the used car lots. So we found it one day. It was in a lot out in an area called Sunnyside. And we went back the next day, it was gone. And some of the people who lived on the block said that the police helicopter had came the day before, and then a tow truck, and they took it away. So anyway, he had this policeman on the stand. So he asked the policeman, isn't it police procedure to search somebody before you put them in the car? And he said, yeah. He said, but we were in front of the Panther's office and we were scared. So we rushed, and when we got downtown, we did a thorough search and found this marijuana. So then Bobby said, okay, well, you say you saw him working on, this was a Fiat. He said, you saw him working on this car, this Fiat. So Bobby said, well, was the engine in the front of the car or was it in the back of the car? So the policeman said it was in the front of the car. So then Bobby said, you mean to tell me this is the only Fiat made in the world with the engine in the front? And the policeman said, yeah. I mean, even the jury bust out laughing. So that got him off, but he was a hell of a lawyer. A hell of a lawyer. And you think with one thing about, you mentioned J. Edgar Hoover and COINTELPRO. When Richard Nixon was elected, 3 days before he was inaugurated he called J. Edgar Hoover, and he said, I want you to make the number one priority destroy the Black Panther Party. He didn't say make it a priority. He said make it the #1 priority. And that's
Mr.
and that's when they uh
Crear, I'm sorry, just a friendly
yeah,
reminder. We
yeah,
have about 30 seconds. We're trying to keep it to a 10-minute minimum for each member.
yeah,
So
yeah.
not to cut you off, we're loving the experiences.
Okay. Yeah. That's all I want to say about the COINTELPRO and how the government came after us so hard. You know, a lot of people, they have all these reasons about what happened with the Black Panther Party, what was personalities. But no, it was the United States government. It came from the top. It came from the president, and they came hard, fast and furious.
Before we go to the next speaker, do you mind repeating the name of the book that you suggested? Someone is asking that in the chat.
Yes, it's called The People's Lawyer, Bobby Caldwell.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's a very good read, you know, because it talks about the party and talks about him, and you know, he was a beautiful brother, and the thing about him, he had polio at a young age, so he walked with a limp, and one arm was stiff, and so I think even that policeman, he kind of said, "Look at this little black dude, it ain't nothing," but I mean, he was something else.
Well, thank you so much for sharing your trials and tribulations. Next, if Ms. Curry can speak, and a friendly reminder, it will be up to 10 minutes, so 5:25. If you can keep it till 5:35, please.
Yes, ma'am. All power to the people.
All power to the people.
People's
All
power.
power to people.
All power to the people.
So
To the people.
I'm
All
Mariama
power to the
Curry.
people.
I'm the youngest female member in the New Orleans chapter. I was 14. I have two of my comrades here with me, Brian and Jason. We were the youngest ones at that time in the New Orleans chapter. I grew up in a civil rights home with my dad, who put together the SCLC with Dr. King and Judge Israel Augustine. So I was always around civil rights movements and civil rights working. So my dad and I had the same fight. We just took different paths, kind of, sort of, to combat racism that we face in America. I joined the Black Panther Party through a friend of mine who took me to a political education class, PE class. And at that point, I fell in love, and I never turned back since then. The Black Panther Party also encouraged me to go to school, to attend university. I did want to be a lawyer because I loved F. Lee Bailey. I loved him. I loved his work, but I decided to become a dancer. My major, I did graduate in political science as a political science major from Jackson State University. But I'm a dancer by trade. That's what I do. So the questions that you guys had, what made me join is that, like, you know, Comrade Crear said, just tired of being downtrodden, tired of, you know, people of other races beating us down. Just tired of it, tired of not having an opportunity as a human being in this country, as people who created a lot of things that this country has, and no one not knowing it. So that was, you know, that was a reason, but also my joy that I got out of joining the Black Panther Party was being on the streets, educating people. When we would be out selling papers or going through the projects and educating people about the system in which we lived, about the Black Panther Party and the things we did. I enjoyed the breakfast program. I enjoyed feeding the children. I still do those kinds of things. I'm still really involved in the community. So those things are the things that I enjoyed. I just enjoyed the platform and program that we had, that we have. I'm not going to say had, that we have. I still enjoyed it. I still think that it was the most brilliant platform and program that could have ever been created by two brothers who really wanted to help out the community. And like Brother Crear said, for a lot of people, we were angels. We were angels. We helped them. We made sure they had everything they needed to have. We still do that. the New Orleans chapter, we give blankets out to the homeless people. We still doing breakfast sometimes in the morning to feed people. We're still doing those things. We're still keeping our legacy alive. And I'm so grateful to Angela for always making sure that people know who we are. I'm not going to say were, but who we are, because we're still here. We're not going anywhere. So thank you, Angela, for that. Thank you for having us on this panel in a position to discuss and to educate people on who we really were. I mean, we were just young kids, like Brother Crear said, young kids, just fighting fascism, fighting racism, fighting capitalism, trying to make sure that everybody was treated equal. So what was so wrong with that? Who did we ever kill? Whose doors did we ever kick down? Who did we ever dope up and go in the house and shoot up? Who did we ever do that to? So when someone come to you with that story about us being, violent, ask them where. Because we had the right to protect ourselves? Is that being violent? We have a governor right now that's saying he want to put into motion that you can carry without having a permit. So what you think is going to happen? What do you think is going to happen? The governor of Louisiana. What do you think is going to happen? It's going to be open season. So where are we? Where were we violent? We never kicked nobody's doors in. We never went in and shot nobody up. We didn't do that. That was done to us. So now all of you guys on this call, when somebody come to you with those untruths, now you can tell them the truth. But you also got to be very careful what you read too. You got to be very careful. You have to always go to the source, because the source is going to tell you the truth. That's my 10 minutes. Yeah. So I also had my other comrade here, Baba Malik. I was a little girl, man. Baba Malik used to take care of me, man. So he's here too as well. You can't see his big head. And Jason is here too. So my 10 minutes is up. I'm sorry, guys.
Well, please let them say hello to the audience in maybe 30 seconds if possible. Now, I know Malik can't respect time, but tell him I said 30 seconds.
Hey, all power to the people, Jason. Thank y'all for having us. Love you, Angela.
Malik?
All power.
All power, Angela, all power.
Yeah.
Any wisdom, Malik and Jason?
Hey, I think Mariama said it all. I'll just be repetitive, but I'm going to turn it over to Malik. Yeah, 10 minutes, Malik.
No, we don't.
No, 10 minutes, 2 minutes.
2 minutes.
Well, I'm gonna give my 2 minutes to Brian.
All right, thank you all.
I got a spot, so you can.
Yeah, there you go.
Oh, well, it's just sad how history is repeating itself. The same condition that exists in 1966 that inspired Huey P. Newton and Bobby Seale to form the Black Panther Party. It's the same thing that I see happening right now. The same conditions, especially here in Louisiana. You see those same conditions. You see the same thing that is happening. And now it's even getting worse because we are becoming more into a real oppressive situation. Everybody talk about violence, but who is violent? Is a person who is the victim of oppression? Is they violent or the oppressor? I mean, we make it like the victims is the violent one, but nobody will be oppressed if it wasn't for violence, and I don't care what it is. Sometimes somebody gonna stand up and say enough is enough. So with that, that's what the party showed me, and it didn't last just the years the party was in existence, because the party have always lived within my heart. Because they have given me a meaning, given my life a meaning to know that I did not submit. I've always because of the teaching of Bobby Seals and Huey P. Newton and other members of the party. Because it's many that's not known, like a Fanny, like the whole New York 21. If you ever read what they wrote about capitalism plus dope equals genocide, you know, you'll see where the party stood. You dig? So again, you know, I really thank you, Angela, for this 2 minutes, and I know I've been over my 2, so I'm gonna stop right there.
Okay, thank you guys so much for that. And hopefully I'm not butchering your name, Mr. Masai. And
Masai is good.
okay.
Okay, and I got to start off though telling y'all assalamu alaikum, power to the people, because I am first of all,
To the people.
I am first of all a
power to the
Muslim.
people.
And okay, and I got some notes here so I don't get off script. And I know about the 10-minute thing. I should also say, even though I'm going to speak about the Panther Party, because that's the theme of this, like a lot of Panthers, I'm also a citizen of the Republic of New Africa. I'm heavily involved in the New African independence movement. In fact, when I did the little capture thing in Virginia, we raised the fact that we was, my co-defendant, who at that time was communication secretary on the East Coast for the Panthers, a brother that was with me had also come from the Panther Party. He actually came from the Mount Vernon branch. He had went to the West Coast, but because of some incidents out there, he ended up coming back to the East Coast. But he was also a citizen of the Republic of North Africa. But again, they were Panthers. So that, since that's the theme, I'll stick to that. I should also say that as a member of the Black Liberation Army, a lot of my thing sometimes was like they would overlap. Sometimes it'd be like a little bit hard to say what was strictly a Panther and what was as a member of the Black Liberation Army. And I know, like, actually one of the best activities I had around with other Panthers was with people who were actually more BLA. And that was organizing in the community, helping people organize around housing. And some of y'all touched on that before too. A lot of times what happens is like folks don't even know what legal rights they have. So I know I was working with a group of folks and we would help people. Like there were certain laws, like where people, like if they had bad housing conditions or if buildings were abandoned, that they had rights, like basically as squatters, but they also could take over the building. And I know, like working with them brothers and sisters, we had done a thing where help people to organize the buildings, but at the same time, organize whole blocks to protect it from enemies, both within and without. So I'm saying that to say, just as people talked about sometimes what you read about the BPP, a lot of times be careful about, you know, be mindful what you read when you hear about the BLA, because it wasn't about running around and shooting, you know, shooting people and things like that. Something I should say about this particular group, because I really don't like Zoom sometimes because I can't say certain things, but because this was actually law students and Professor Angela, you know, I had ran into her before and heard some of her talks. Because it was law students, I figured I could throw a few things out there because I'm also a member of Jericho Amnesty Movement for recognition and release of political prisoners and prisoners of war within the US. And even though a large number of them come from the Panther Party, they're not the only ones. But we do know a lot of times what happens is what we're not seeing is like, okay, there's a lot of spirit, but sometimes even with Black law students, it's like not as involved as we would like to see them. And with that, I should also say, I thank you all for the invite, you know, and thank you all for your work. So again, that was one of the reasons why I figured I could at least bring that up here and maybe folks would get interested and check out our website. Now, okay, as far as how I became involved with the Black Panther Party, when I got out of those folks' military in 1969, because I was, you know, coming back from Nam anyway, like a lot of folks, I wanted to get involved and struggle. I went to the Panther office where I was from, in the city I was from, Jersey City, New Jersey. And actually at that time, they told me that I couldn't join because Eldridge had said not to take anybody from the military in because they might be informers. Of course, the thing that went through my mind was if I was an informer or agent, I just wouldn't tell you I was coming from the military, but it made sense to them. So officially, I wasn't in the party then, but was working with some people. And again, it was like people doing some good stuff. Some had a relationship, well, everybody had a relationship with the Panther Party, but wasn't necessarily in. It was after a few things happened and I ended up going to another city, and that's where I actually started working with and I might have stepped off in North for a minute. And that's where some of the people who are on here, that's where I first ran into them. But I ended up going to New York and ended up working with some other people there who was doing some of the work I was talking about. After that, I came back to New Jersey and started doing more work there until, well, an incident happened and we had to do some traveling. In terms of like I said, one of the best experiences I had was working around housing. One of the benefits for me of the Panther Party was it was a concentrated thing of some real good people and picked up some real good experiences. I also should say like, and I'm trying to avoid we're getting into the underground and getting into the above ground, but I was with the Panther Party, like I said, for about 4 years. But as somebody else also said, it's like it was never a thing to me where like it became like this hard line where I was no longer like, you know, like when you ask me what date was I out of the Panther Party, I can't say that there's a hard date. You know, it would depend on where I was at. Also, like the question was asked, like how was work decided? How did the Panther Party pick the cities that they were going to work in? A lot of times it was like people who were already there. That was the city that they were in, and they were already doing some work. Some cases, different formations might emerge with the Panther Party. In some cases, people would reach out to an office and decide to do a chapter. Let me see, what other question can I ask about? Should there be a BPP in prison? And I'm skipping ahead because one of the things that happened is like in some places, I know like in some places they had BPP chapters inside, but there were some places that actually didn't allow it. So it wasn't really consistent. I couldn't really answer that question. Living conditions as a BPP member, that would depend on where you were at, where you traveled to, like anything else. And at this point, you know, I want to go back to encouraging folks to like actually looking at some of the cases that of people who were inside. You know, I had read some of the articles where folks talk about people the 30, 40 years, but there's still a lot of people in there. And I'm going to go back to encourage y'all to look at the Jericho Amnesty Movement website, because there's a lot of folks who could actually use your help in all kinds of ways. There's all the health issues that I heard people talk about, even visiting people's families and aiding, assisting them that's outside. Those are some of the important things. And again, for law students, I think you really need to get deep into it. And on the question of prisoners of war, my turn downs, when I did get turned down for parole, which even though I got turned down many times, I still feel blessed because they never took me to a thing of telling me like I had to, what was that, renounce criminal behavior or I had to apologize. And I mean, I know a lot of people, it's like if you was engaged in revolutionary activity, you had to confess to a criminal thing before they would even consider you. They never did that with me. They turned me down because of my ideas of revolutionary violence, but they never turned me down because of the commission of a crime. And that makes a big difference when you don't have to cop to something that you know you didn't. Because a lot of times people say what they wouldn't say, or, but when you've been down like 15, 16 years and they say, well, you need to at least say this before you can get out, it makes a big difference when you don't. You might get turned down, but at least they ain't insulting your intelligence about why they turn you down. But I do know what we did lack at that time was that people were doing a lot of jailhouse lawyering, but there wasn't really any lawyers, particularly from the Black community. So a lot of times only lawyers, and it wasn't wrong with getting lawyers from somewhere else, but it's different when the lawyers come from your communities, because then like there's a relationship with the family that can't come from somewhere else. But as time went on, and I got to commend lawyers again, because even though y'all talk about the hits that the BPP took, and they did, if you really, if you look back at some stuff, you'll see like lawyers got hit real hard. Particularly if you was a Black lawyer, you could say certain things, and next thing you know, you up under conspiracy. A lot of times we're like Black law students, we're just barely getting by. Wasn't no trust fund that they can rely on to get things done. And even though, they had some principles, it's real hard when they tell you, like if you do this or do that, you out of it. You no longer, it's not just a job, but you face some prison time yourself. You can look at some of the history like the National Conference of Black Lawyers. The time, oh, I can't hear you. Okay, but I want to say that, yeah, like I said, for Black law students, but in particular, you got to commend y'all for the job you're doing or trying to do.
And thank you for your comments. I want to have this moment to get some help on that question relative to the Panthers in prison. Since you were not able to answer that, I do believe that Robert King is at a watch party. So Orissa, you all are on mute. If King is there with you, could you please have him maybe give us some help about that one question relative to Panthers in prison? I'm seeing Orissa. I'm not sure if you all are understanding. You are mute.
Okay, just
Okay.
Just one quick comment to that.
Okay.
There were Panthers inside. We just didn't have a formal Panther chapter.
Yes, sir. I'm fully aware, but what I want to do is, because Louisiana actually had the first and one of the few, and we happen to have the good fortune of having Robert King from the Angola 3, who survived over 20-something years in solitary confinement, in the audience. Why not seize the opportunity? So well, King, if you don't mind telling us just a little bit about why we would have needed to have Panther chapters behind bars.
And Angela, I wish he was here. He had planned to come here, but he had to wait.
No problem. Okay, no problem. All right, no problem. Thanks a lot. All right, so I'll say this quickly, from the many lessons that I've had from those who were part of those prison chapters. What they essentially did behind those prison walls were exactly what was going on outside of those prisons, which was teach political education classes and provide safety and community empowerment and teach people about constitutional protections and legal protections and human rights. So it was just a space where we educated and empowered in the same way behind bars as we did amongst the free population. So we'll move on now to our next speaker, who is Mr. Brian Hunter.
Excuse me, Angela, excuse me. You have Malik here. I'm sure Malik can answer that question.
Okay, great. Malik, you want to chime in and give us some information on that question about the reason for these organizing of Panthers behind walls and what that would have looked like?
Yeah, but first I want to say, Eldridge Cleaver never spoke against a Black veteran. That's the part I want to tell Pro. That's a lie that was projected by him after Geronimo G. Jaga, a declarated Vietnam veteran, started organizing. When they seen what happened with the shootout in Los Angeles in December of 1969, where the first time SWAT ever came into existence, the first event was against members of the Black Panther Party. And if it wasn't for Geronimo G. Jaga, those brothers would have got, and sisters would have died in that house. So it have always been veterans that have stood for it. You dig? And that became, I'm a veteran. You dig? And with many others. And the shootout that I was in, it was for veterans. So again, veterans have always played a role, but their fear was veterans coming back with combat experience, who had been to Vietnam, and then come back and facing the racism, the prejudice, the exploitation that we was facing, and seeing what the Vietnamese people have done and was standing up for. So it was a big fear. And one thing George Jackson, in his book, How to Combat, and species, How to Combat American Fascism, he speaks upon the fact of an opinion molding institution. And one of the best ways to keep a veteran from joining the party is to make him think that he was going to be classified as an Uncle Tom or as a snitch or as an informer. But in all actuality, we seeked out veterans, you know, to come in with that experience, to help teachers, because all the way up until August of 1970, you know, the Black Panther Party was divided into two. Those who was doing the social programs and carrying out those programs, and those who had made a commitment of what they would do, or what they was willing to do if Huey P. Newton was given the death penalty. You know, what would they do? Would we sit around and allow the state of California to execute him, to gas him? You know, because he had left that, he had shown by that example. So it was many of us that went underground then. And many brothers are still in prison. And many died in prison. You dig? Because they said that I refuse to let our leader be executed. I will go underground and do whatever it takes to make sure that Huey P. Newton is free. I could remember being out there listening to when Huey was going to trial, when people were saying that if Huey is executed, you dig, ain't nothing in America was gonna be the same. You know, so again, you know, you had those factions. Now, as for those in prison, I can only tell you about what we did on death row and what we did in the dungeon in parish prison. And that is organized. When they sent so-called Black gangsters down there with us and hoping that we would cancel each other out, many of these brothers joined the party and joined what was called the Brotherhood and organized not only in Orleans Parish Prison, but also took that same zeal to Angola and organized there. I mean, you have to understand, it was a big threat when you talking about brothers coming there talking about, well, hey, you know, you ain't gonna take away my humanity. You ain't gonna take away, you ain't gonna make me uncivilized. You ain't gonna make me start oppressing my own to keep you in power. You dig? And they start organizing. You had, I mean, listen, look at the, I wish King would have been on it, because King became a renowned jailhouse lawyer. He had became such a renowned jailhouse lawyer till right now, Cambridge University in England have given him an honorary doctorate degree in law. You think I'm seeing this man? I can't tell you the whole prison library in law library in Angola. King just about mastered it. You know, I mean, and he also helped organize others. When I look at Vote, an organization that exists here. Vote wouldn't have been in existence if it wasn't have been for what those brothers that went through and what they endured. You imagine going before the board every 6 months, knowing that's all you got to say is I renounce Black Pantherism and I'll be out of solitary confinement. And for him to stay there 27 years, for Albert to stay there 44 years, for Herman to stay in solitary of 41 years and never denounced it, stood strong on those principles. And this was in CCR and Camp J was areas where they sent Blacks to break them.
10 minutes up.
My 10 minutes is up, so I got Mariama behind me with a hammer, and I don't want her to hit me no more. So I'm gonna shut up.
Well, thank you so much for that insight. Mr. Brian Hunter.
Yeah, thank you.
Yes.
All power to the people.
Oh, power.
Listen, thank you for including us in this. And as Malik was so eloquently speaking, giving you guys some history about some information. He was just honored Sunday at one of the churches, and he gave, such a in-depth, profound lesson about our history and where we're trying to go, and I also, before I do anything else, is to give the acknowledgement to Sister Angela for her commitment and support that she has given us.
Message is received from Caroline Heldman.
Throughout our struggle, and she ain't just started doing this; she been doing it, right? And a lot has been said, and I'm happy that we made some corrections on about the chapters being formed in prisons, because I definitely can witness to the beginning of the chapter formed in Angola with King, Woodfall, and Herman Wallace. And as Malik was saying about how after the shootout, how they organized in Paris prison, it became one of the best places that you could be in prison was where the Black Panthers were.
On that tier.
And I mean, not just throughout the prison, but out here in the community. The community knew that if you got an opportunity to be in prison with the Black Panthers, you were doing real well. You were in a safe place to continue to struggle. But a little bit about myself, as Mariama said about being the youngest member in the Black Panther here in the New Orleans branch. I was a part of an organization called UNO before I joined the Panthers, which was an organization that modeled itself after the Black Panther Party. And it was through this organization where I made the connection between the two. And we were doing almost the same thing as the Panthers were with the breakfast program. We initiated a breakfast program like they already would have it. We would tutor little kids after school. We were doing anything and everything that we could to build up the community and not tear it down. Because before that, I was on the path of where the streets were calling me to do things or to be involved with things that was counterproductive to the struggle. And it just so happened the night of September the 14th, the night before the shootout, I too went down to the office to go to a political education class. And just by chance, that was the night where the two undercover agents and informants were exposed. And wow, it was a night that I will always remember, because from that night on, I had a connection to the Black Panther Party. And I don't say, me most of the time when I'm addressing things about the party, I don't say I'm a former member, you know. I'm a member for life. It's not one of them situations where you can go back to not being a revolutionary. So from that night, from that day on, I've been connected to the Panther Party. Sister Betty and a couple of brothers that mentored me to the Black Panther Party. They opened up the second off when the office was vamped and raided on September the 15th. Betty and Althea and a few of the brothers from my neighborhood and my community reopened the office that day. And that started September the 15th. And again, in November the 26th.
Yeah, Thanksgiving.
Yeah, Thanksgiving, the office was raided again, and where Sister Betty was shot.
And then in October was the Santa.
Yeah. So I forgot that. You know, I got this history buff behind me. You know that. I mean, he can remember some dates that I can't. But anyway, that's my history with the Black Panthers. I'm still involved. We're still here, and we're still dedicated and committed to the community and doing the best that we can. What we have to work with. I want to say one thing before I get off. Huh?
For 10 minutes.
We with the things that were mentioned about the new governor of Louisiana, as Malik would say. Oh, it's about to be on, because he's going to bring some situations out that if we allow it, if we do nothing, we're going to wake up tomorrow morning back in chains. And some of us may not think when we think about change, we thinking about it in the physical sense. No, I'm talking about the change on our minds again, you know, because this governor is talking about taking away programs that the Black Panthers started And the government took over with the breakfast programming and feeding the children. And they're talking about taking this away from the kids down here in Louisiana now. So we just employed support from you guys to lift us up in our struggle, because we in for a fight down here right now. So all power to the people.
It's the people's power. So let me say this, Angela. So I think what everybody in here needs to really understand is that, number one, you have this piece called critical race theory, right? Right? So a theory is something that has not been proven. Am I correct?
Yes.
All right or wrong?
That's
so
right.
You're going to tell us that slavery did not happen. Slavery had not been proven. So one of the strongest points that the Black Panther Party had was political education classes. And so we in New Orleans, we were trying to get back to that, where people can come and we pick a book and we read it and we break it down and we talk about it. That needs to happen. That is crucial, and it needs to happen. The other thing, like Brian is saying, we started those programs. We did, even feeding the masses of the people. So like Brian is saying, he want to stop different feeding programs where people can come and get food. We started those programs, not the government. But the government also tried to destroy the programs that we started for the community. So the younger generation, you got to pay attention to what's going on. You got to pay attention to where all of that started and how it's coming back around. And it can come back around if we pay attention to it. Like this man destroying these programs that we initially started. Got it?
Thank you so much for that, Ms. Curry. Mr. Billy X Jennings, who was the personal bodyguard to Huey P. Newton, just be mindful that you have 10 minutes. Is he on, Mr. Billy?
Billy, if you're speaking, please unmute. We're not hearing you. Billy? I guess we can go to our next speaker. I'll try to call him on the phone.
Okay, Mr. Yusuf? I don't know if he's on as well. Okay, let me see. Okay, well, while we're having technical difficulties, does anybody that's in the general public, do you guys have any questions? I know that was a lot, and I definitely appreciate you guys for taking the time out of your evening to spend time with the original Black Panthers. So if anybody has any questions, if you guys can just raise your hand. Okay, General?
How y'all doing over our ex-Black Panther Party, Washington? We actually have political education classes every other Saturday still. We're trying to get that increased, but you know, people don't really like to tap in too much in Washington. But I was actually hoping to reach out and ask some of y'all that have been in the party much longer than ourselves to come in and speak to the younger generation. We're trying to get them more involved, and it's really starting to ramp up again. But I would love to be able to have y'all come in and speak. If y'all want to just shoot me an email with your emailing in or a message, I mean, that'd be great. That's all though. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, and just to be sure that I'm following this request is for the Black Panther Party anywhere in the nation to be able to do another Zoom. Am I understanding?
Yeah, we do Zooms. Where we'll come in and invite the community for some political education and
okay.
Yeah, to have them come in and speak with everybody, that'd be great.
Okay, so what I'll do, because of the time constraints, I'm gonna put my email in the chat, and if you email me, I'll get you in touch with everybody you need.
Magnanimous. Thank you very much.
Great. Moderator, next question.
Okay, Miss Darcy, I saw that you raised your hand next.
Yes, thank you. And I'm going to sound really ignorant, and I am. And I started being illuminated by someone else who's on here, and I'm going to use her name, even though she might not want that, but I think she'd be fine, because she wrote a book. At least I learned about it in 2010, and then I was telling her in 2021, after 2024, that, oh yeah, there's this great book about the Black Panthers were really good people and they did great things. It was wrong, what's been told before, and that's Arissa Aren.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Crear, can you mute your mic so we can hear Miss Darcy, please?
Mute my mic?
No, Mr. Crear. I don't know if you could hear the background noise.
Oh yeah, but I don't pay any attention to that, I'm just, can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, this is what I want to know, this naive person here. And also, I went to the bank to make a deposit before this, and two of the three people in the bank were Black, and I was telling them that I was going to this meeting, and they were much younger, and they didn't know about, and I said no, and I'm telling them about the Black Panthers being the really good source of information. So I think this also needs to be told. And what I was curious about, because I am really ignorant about everything and I'm learning so much, is, and I'm glad that Arissa, alerted me to it with your bulletin, and Richard Saxer. And so I'm really wanting to ask you, when was the first time or wherever are whites allowed into the Black Panther?
It's all done. It's all done.
Okay, that's all. I just wanted to find out how that is. That's all.
So the question is, for any Black Panther Party member that is on, would you answer if white people could ever be members, or what role did they play with any of the chapters?
Well, the thing about the Black Panther Party was we had coalitions with all kind of groups. We had the Puerto Ricans, the Young Lord Party. We had the Young Patriots, who were white. You had the Red Guard, who was yellow. But the Black Panther Party, for one thing, Huey and Bobby said we had to organize our own community first, because we had to show Black people that we could accomplish things. And we had all kind of coalitions. If you ever, all power to people went all the way around the world. And like I said, we had to show ourselves first, but we had coalitions with all kind of groups.
Okay, thank you for that. We see Kyra's question.
I just want to say, that makes really great sense to me. That totally explains it, just what you said, Mr. Crear.
Thank you. Said all power to people. We didn't say Black power. We said all power to the people.
No,
so
I know. I was joining in with that. No, I love it.
So the Black Panther Party was for Black people in particular, all people of color, and all oppressed people around the world.
And if you would look, I don't know if you hear me, but if you would look at what Fred Hampton did at 21 in Chicago, how he created, him and another brother by the name of Robert Lee, how they created the Rainbow Coalition. That's where it started. It started with the Panthers. Just at the time where you talk to comrades, where you'll see two Dixie battle flags up on the wall, and they would walk into that meeting seeing them Dixie battle flags and just slide it over so that they could put the Panther right up in between. And by the end of those meetings, they had those racist white boys at that time talking about solidarity with the Panther Party. We always stress that you go back into your community. We work in solidarity, but it's your responsibility to organize in the white community, not to organize in the Black community. You think your organization is supposed to be in your community. And with that, look at where we at right now. We got this fool up here as our governor. But look what happened after Katrina. when they wouldn't allow African Americans to go into Gretna, another part of this country, because of the color of their skin. It took whites that used their privilege to bring us supplies in Algiers where they allow us to survive. So again, we have to look at it. And I'm gonna tell you, there's never been a case against Gretna for denying us our rights. Never. There's never been a real conviction of any of those vigilantes. Never.
Okay, now we have Mr. Billy X.
All kind of terrorists.
We have Mr. Billy X now ready to speak. He's our next panelist. Billy, are you hearing us? Billy? If you're on, you're still muted. We're not hearing you.
Hello.
Yes, Billy, are you hearing us now?
Okay, am I up now?
You are. We're ready for you.
Mr. Billy, you're on the Zoom.
Okay.
Please start speaking on the Zoom.
I'm not on the Zoom.
Yes, sir, you are. We hear you.
They hear you.
Okay. Well, anyway, my name is Billy X Jennings. I joined the party when I was 17. In 1968, I became a Panther in training. At that particular time, you had to go through a 6-week training period in which you learned political education, you learned the rules of the party, the 10-point program. You had to obtain a weapon for self-defense because we were a self-defense organization. I was a student at that time, so I attended Laney College. How I came in contact with the party in the summer of 1968, I was going to summer school at Laney College. Laney College is maybe 2.5 blocks away from the Oakland Alameda County Courthouse. At that time, Huey was going to trial, and I had 11 o'clock criminology class, and you could hear the Panthers from the courthouse to the campus. And so around about 11:55 or something like that, I got out of the class and walked around to where I heard the rally happen and listened to what the party members were saying. At the same time, when I graduated from high school, my English teacher gave me a book to read, which is the autobiography of Malcolm X, which I was reading at that time. So when so the party members were saying the same thing Malcolm was saying. And so they opened up an office on 73rd and East 14th in the summer of '68, and I became a member. I went to school and attended Laney College, and in 1969, we started free breakfast for school children program at St. Augustine Church, the first breakfast program of the Black Panther Party. I was already going downtown to go to college, so I was chosen to go to the breakfast program because each office had to send 2 or 3 members to the breakfast program in order to learn how to run it and set it up and in our community. At that time, I was working at the East Oakland office. I went through several changes. I worked in East Oakland for about 2 years. Then I was transferred to Central Headquarters. At that time, I worked at Central Headquarters. What we call special assignments. What my job was, my jobs were assigned by the Central Committee, and I had various jobs like being a student at Merritt College. I was a duty driver for the party. I was a boycott line captain. I worked with the United Farm Workers, the boycott grapes and lettuce. Also, during the 1971, 72, 73 era, I ran Bobby Seale's campaign office in East Oakland. I did that until 1974. During that time, 71 to 1973, I was a personal aide to Huey P. Newton and David Hilliard. David Hilliard, I was the aide for in 1971, and Huey started his trial in 72, and I became his aide. Political education was very key in the party. I mean, reading was, a Panther had to read 2 hours a day. They had to read the Black Panther Party newspaper. They had to always have their red book with them. So studying was very important. Now, about COINTELPRO, all of our offices were spied upon. Our phones were bugged. Some members went to jail, like myself, a number of times. During 1971, 72, I was harassed by the government, and they were sending me draft notices because I was working with Huey P. Newton. Huey P. Newton at that time was on Nixon's enemies list. And so I became a target as well. So I was arrested for draft evasion and faced time and going to jail. But how COINTELPRO saved me was the fact that they discovered COINTELPRO in early 1971. My case was 4 or 5 months later. So the people that broke into that post office and discovered the COINTELPRO mimeographed off a lot of copies and sent it around the country. My lawyer, Charles Gary, got a copy, and he was able to use that to our benefit. So when I went to court, the government, leveled their charges, and because they were still in denial of COINTELPRO, when Charles Gary and his lawyers asked them for all the information they had on Bill Jennings, the government balked. They dropped the case because their main focus was on Huey P. Newton, and they didn't want to acknowledge that they did have an ongoing COINTELPRO going against Huey P. Newton and the Black Panther Party. So I was able to beat that case of COINTELPRO, COINTELPRO case. I stayed in the party. Some of the special assignments, again, I was assigned to was to help Albert Big Man Howard to give away 10,000 free bags of groceries. To do that particular feat, we had to organize a number of Panthers, go to chicken ranches and get the best prices and so forth to make all those events happen in 1971 and 72. So I did a lot of behind the scene activity with the party. Even today, in 1995, members of here in Sacramento where I live got together and formulated an organization called It's About Time. It's About Time is a Black Panther Party alumni committee as well as archive, because we didn't have an archive at that time and we didn't have an alumni committee. So from 1996, when we had our 30-year reunion in Oakland at Jack London Square, we've been together. Every year since that time, we have Black Panther History Month. We have an annual Bobby Hutton Day. We've given many, many events. We sponsored the 40th, the 45th, the 50th, the 55th year of the Black Panther Party in the city of Oakland. We have a traveling exhibit, which is traveled all over the world, as well as the 45th year, we had a record-breaking attendance at the Yerba Buena Museum in San Francisco. And for the 50th year celebration of the Black Panther Party, we organized a record-breaking exhibit at the Oakland Museum. We broke all attendance records. So I've been working with the Black Panther Party legacy for about 50 years now. And the work continues to grow every day. I'm glad to see our Panther Cubs growing up and developing and carrying on the legacy. So our work is not done. One of the things I'm very proud of is working to free political prisoners. Back a few years ago, I heard Malik Rahim, he was living in San Francisco at that time, and he talked about these brothers being locked up in jail in Louisiana. So after the speaking engagement, I approached him. I already knew who he was, but he had changed, his name and what he looked like. But we talked about organizing. So with the help of Malik and a few other people, we founded the Angola 3 Defense Committee, and we were able to free Albert and Herman, and King got out of jail as well. So we've been helping political prisoners all along and keeping the legacy going. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that. And Ms. Johnson, I forgot about you. Do you still have a question?
Yes, I do. I'm sorry, y'all. I'm in my car now, but I wanted to ask if any of the members on the call know anything or have any first-hand knowledge about the showdown in the Desire with Mark Essex in New Orleans. That's where I'm from, and that's one of those stories I kind of grew up hearing, and just wanted to know if you guys had any insight on it.
I'll say this very quickly. The incident with Mark Essex should not be in any way associated with the ambushes that happened in the Desire, because they're all very separate historical incidences. So there is this myth that Mark Essex was a Panther and that he was representing somehow the cause of the Panthers when he committed his acts, and that is false. There were 2 ambushes, and I am being very intentional about using the word ambush, because there are people who write about this as if it was a shootout, which suggests that you have people shooting in both directions, and that is not what happened. What happened to the Panthers is on September the 15th, 1970, law enforcement came and ambushed them. And then took all of them to trial and charged them with crimes that they never committed. And fortunately for all of those Panthers, the jury in Louisiana, after hearing those facts, found them all not guilty. And I want everybody to process what I just said, because they were all charged with attempted murder of police officers, and all of them were found not guilty. And so that should tell you how compelling the facts were in favor of the Panthers. And if I've piqued your interest, you need to be with us tomorrow night, because for the first time in history, the attorney who did the amazing, incredible job of representing all of those Panthers will be honored by these law students who called this convening tonight. They are going to recognize Mr. Jones and the Panthers who received a privilege of his capable representation will be with us on Friday night. There was also a second ambush, and that happened on Thanksgiving Day, 1970, and that was intended to basically annihilate the remaining members of the chapter that they didn't take out on September the 15th. On this call, we have, if you see Betty and Ron, Betty was one of the females who was inside the residence on Thanksgiving Day, and she was unarmed, and she was approaching the police to show her cooperation when they fired 5 bullets into her body. Betty still carries those bullets in her chest with us today. And there was never any accountability for any of these law enforcement actions. And so Mark Essex comes along, and he is not a part of the Panther story. So if you are ever told that what Mark Essex did when he got on top of the building at the Howard Johnson and shot at officers or whatever transpired, that should not be connected to the Panther story. He was not a Panther. He was not acting in agency with any Panthers. And so we need to leave with that correct understanding. And more importantly, we need to recognize, as we have these continuous conversations now about law enforcement accountability, law enforcement immunity, And now the discussion on the part of the governor that we should arm and fund law enforcement even more now. We need to be mindful that it was law enforcement that ambushed the Black Panther Party. And these people were young students, college students, veterans, women, mothers, parents, and no one has ever been held accountable. In fact, no one has even acknowledged what has happened in those two ambushes. So thanks for asking the question. And if you want to know more, please be with us tomorrow night so that you can hear from the mouth of the attorney who put on this class defense and got no notoriety at all for the work that he did on part of the Black Panther Party. Next question.
Didn't see any other hands, but does anybody else have a question for any of our speakers? Yes, ma'am, Miss Darcy. You're on mute.
I'm sorry, thank you. As a 15-year-old living in New Orleans all my life at the time, I remember vividly when that happened because they had this newscaster, Alec Gifford, he was making a big scene of, you know, ducking behind cars and stuff like that. And, you know, what was interesting to me, I always viewed the guy in my head as white. And this is news to me that he was ever considered a Black Panther. Somehow I missed that because I was, you know, like any 15-year-old might have been, because it was all on all the stations at that time. You know, they were all publicizing it. But that's just news to me. And I'm glad he wasn't a Black Panther, but anyways, that's it.
No, he was Black, and I don't mean in any way to suggest that I'm sympathetic to his cause, but I do want to add some context to Mark Essex, because Mark Essex, I do believe from credible sources, was very disgruntled about the fact that the same tanks that showed up in the Desire Housing Project on September the 15th showed up on Southern University's campus on November the 16th, 1972, and decided to assassinate. And once again, I am using language very intentionally. They assassinated two students who were unarmed and who were not activists and were not engaging in any type of protest. And so it is my understanding that Mark Essex was very disgruntled about the idea that so many Black lives were being lost in causes that we must understand the United States Constitution had justified. And so the Panthers were operating off of principles that they really got out of the Constitution. It wasn't radical at all. I mean, they were thinking in the 14th Amendment, when you tell people they're equal, they believe that. And, you know, when the 14th Amendment, you tell people they're going to get due process. And the 6th Amendment, you tell them they're going to get a jury trial. They believe that stuff. And so this was not radical politics. And so Mark Essex, as I understand it, was very disgruntled that so many Black lives were being lost in the state over people doing what the First Amendment said was legally protected. Again, I'm not Mark Essex defense attorney. I just want to be sure that we don't associate him with the Panthers, because that would be false. Any other questions before we conclude the program?
There's one question in the chat. Oh, we already shared it. It is in the chat. So the event tomorrow is, I do believe, Miss Quantaria Russell. Yes, she did post it in the chat. So I don't think there was anything further, Miss Bell.
Okay, well, thank you all. And to the distinguished members of the Black Panther Party, I want to thank you all for joining us today for this incredible event. And before we conclude, I would like to take a moment to express our gratitude to all of those who have contributed to the success of this gathering. First and foremost, I want to acknowledge and express our sincere appreciation to our co-sponsors, Aging People in Prison Human Rights Campaign, Dialogue on Race, Louisiana, and Justice and Beyond Louisiana, College Prison Project, the Justice Center, Tree Shakers Radio Talk Show. And without your support and collaboration, this event would not have been possible. Your commitment to diversity, equity, and inclusion in the legal profession is commendable, and we are so grateful for your partnership. I also like to recognize the hardworking members of the planning committee who dedicated their time and their efforts to ensure that the seamless execution of this event. Their dedication and attention to detail have truly made a difference, and we thank them for their invaluable contributions. Let's take a moment to appreciate their efforts by sharing the planning committee screen for everyone to see. Thank you. As we come to a close, I am excited to also announce our upcoming gala that is tomorrow on February 23rd, 2024. Please save this date as it promises to be an evening of celebration, networking, and empowerment. And we will honor those of the Black Panther Party and the Black Panther Party's attorney, Ernest Jones, and other members of our Black Law Student Association. We also look forward to seeing you all there as we continue to foster a sense of community and support within the legal profession. And a heartfelt thank you also goes out to our esteemed panelists who have shared their insights and expertise with us today. Your contribution has enriched our understanding and sparked our meaningful conversations. Let's take a moment to express our gratitude by sharing the panel screen for everyone to see as well. Thank you so much. Now, as we wrap up this event, I want to leave you all with a charge. Let the knowledge gained here today inspire you to be agents of positive change within your community, and let the legal field embrace the challenges ahead with resilience and determination, knowing that you are all a part of a powerful network and committed to justice and equality. In closing, I extend my deepest appreciation to each and every one of you for being a part of this transformative experience. Let us carry the spirit of unity and empowerment forward as we continue our journey towards a more just and equitable future. And thank you, and you all have a wonderful evening.
I see a hand from Ms. Brenda Williams. Do you want to share anything, Ms. Williams?
I just have a question, and I actually want to thank the panel for making this available to all of us. And for those of us who will not be able to make it to Baton Rouge to hear the presentations and the honoring of Attorney Ernest Jones, is it possible that at some date we might at least be able to see that part of the event that's taking place tomorrow?
We definitely plan to have video footage of that event tomorrow, and this one was recorded. So for anybody who wants the recording, I'll put my email in the chat so that you are welcome to have it, because this was done so that we could educate the world about the legacy of the party. So we'll make sure anything that you need in terms of tonight's coverage or tomorrow's coverage, please email me and I'll make sure you get what you need.
Wonderful. Thanks so much, Professor Bell. And I had to get on later tonight. So
we appreciate your support, and make sure
I'd
now
like
that
those
you've
links,
heard
but
all
I'll
of
send
this.
you an email.
Okay, and make sure now that you've heard all this truth, you bring this back to Louisiana Civil Rights Museum, Ms. Williams.
You know I will.
All right, thank you. And I see one other hand.
Yeah, I just wanted to point out that there hasn't been much talk of education of Black youth. The Black Panther Party was involved in university Africana studies in 1969. Bunchy Carter lost his life over establishing African American studies. And as the universities are now, they're trying to do away with African American studies. And I think that's a harm to, the education of our brain thrust, because we expect our brain thrust to go to these institutions to better our people's chances of survival. And I think, this discussion neglected that altogether. I mean, I try to go around to universities, and when I speak, I try to educate them about the 10-point program, but most importantly, about establishing education within our community. Because I'm a snowbird, so I go to Florida, and I can tell you, Black education in Florida is under attack. And as it goes under attack, you see that the players are going more and more on a national level. And therefore they expect to not educate Black youth, but to also do away with our history. And, this is one of the reasons why political education is so important. I mean, just recently, when I spoke at Seton Hall University, and I spoke to the Black students 2 years ago, they actually took over the dean's office because they were going to do away with African studies. And they fought and took over, and they got Kelly Harris, who is a known scholar from University of Chicago, who taught at Seton Hall as a result, and is now at the University of Pennsylvania. And all these universities, they want to do away with African Studies department because they already did away with affirmative action. But the point is that we have to concentrate on our educational system from the school boards. They have Mothers for Liberty. The Mothers for Liberty is nothing more than Ku Klux Klan in disguise. And these are some of the things that the Black Panther Party has always stood for in California, especially because a lot of the African study programs were based on the principles that the Black Panther Party promoted. And I'm a child of the Cochran Hall takeover at Rutgers University in Newark. And just a month before that Cochran Hall was taken over, Bunchy Carter was murdered at the University of California over the disputes of the African Studies Department. And now that Rutgers University has a full, well, they call it ethnic studies program, but it has an African Studies Department built into it. And Seton Hall University has gone back to having an established African Studies Department. But here's the caveat with that. The thing is that they never give up trying to put you in a corner. So now, in view of the Black Students Union, in view of the Black Student Organization, they want to bring in the NAACP chapter student body, which means that they're trying to Negrotize the student population. Of course, these are freshman students because they don't know anything about the evil standards of the universities. They don't know anything about white supremacy. They're just coming into the university. And all the university wants is to bring a student down so they could dumbicize them to only think about, well, I'm going to be a hip hopper or I'm going to be a hip hopper entrepreneur. That's it. Keep them in their corner because of the simple reason that we have to educate people to be a broad spectrum within our society and to cover all points.
Thank you very much for that contribution, because we definitely don't want anyone to leave here not understanding the commitment of the Black Panthers to the study of Africana history, as well as to politics, and more important than anything, for them to not understand the commitment that the chapter had to education in general. So we really appreciate you making that contribution. And Dr. Bowles, I see your hand up.
Good evening. I'm about to jump out of my skin. Thank you so much for this, Angela. Thank you for reminding me, students. Mr. Smith, when you were talking, I can almost weep. I have had conversations with young Black people. My niece, a niece in particular, who was an athlete and thought that she was member of everything in school. She was like homecoming queen or whatever, and she would correct me. Aunt Valva, those are the times past. Then she met her Blackness. She went to a university in South Carolina, and she was singled out by a group of white young men who told the white young women she was with, who were athletes on her team, just leave us the chocolate one. And she was so hurt. and so afraid, but thank goodness she was the driver. So when they ran out, she drove away. And all I could think is what happened if she weren't the driver and she got left behind? Well, that's part of a horror, but when one of the white girls called the police, 911, it turns out that the lead perpetrator, a very tall, handsome white dude, was the son of the sheriff in that small town. So things are still as bad as they were, and that grieves me. It took almost 40 minutes for me to calm her down, try to get her back on her base, because for the first time, what I had been telling her was no longer just a myth. And as you stated, she had been Negroized to believe that, oh, there's no such thing as prejudice. Look at what I've done. My best friend's white since I was in kindergarten. And when she was isolated, suddenly she had no coping mechanism. So it is imperative we maintain our brain trust, or we will be slaughtered. And I thank you for that comment. And it just made me emotional. And I beg your pardon, Angela, for me prolonging this wonderful presentation.
Yeah, I mean, we have to, it's a question of from the cradle to the grave. And I think along the way, we have to make sure we have members on that school board that will promote our issues. Because the simple reason you can have a member of the NAACP student body there, but Black radical power is what brought these universities up to step, and what brought Black community into the reality of the situation. Because we don't have, people say that, well, if they see a blade of grass, they think they made it. I mean, we're not confined to the ghettos anymore. I mean, we take over suburbs. But the point is that we should not be comfortable, and we should not lose our Black intellectual pursuit, just like reparations, just like housing, just like all these things, because the simple reason that they will always put us last. I mean, I support not just civil rights, which the university finds it easy to deal with people who want to promote civil rights, because they see those civil rights and they say, well, that's wrong. Or either they build a law around it to say, hey, that's not right. No, the Black Panther Party always dealt in human rights. We dealt with what was right. Dropping bombs on people was wrong. And then people say, oh no, they're doing the right thing. You're not doing the right thing. You're killing people. And these are our representatives. These are people that are educated within our school system. And I can tell you, Cory Booker, I know him personally, but he's a lowlife. How can he justify the murder of children? And you're not going to tell me Martin Luther King was supporting the murder of children. Malcolm X certainly didn't. And I don't think Martin Luther King did. But the thing is that if we are educating our people properly, we'll know more people than Martin Luther King. We'll know Franz Fanon. We'll know James Baldwin. We'll know all the people that had Black intellectual thought, that cared about Black people. And that's the problem. A lot of these so-called Black politicians, they're only interested in being political tools of whoever's going to pay them the most money. And they're not going to deal with survival programs, feeding children. I mean, how can the state of Mississippi say, oh no, we don't want Medicare, because if we have Medicare, people won't go back to work? Are you serious? These are the people we're dealing with, because the simple reason our educational system has become so corrupt, because the principals and the superintendents go in there to find out how much money they're going to get paid. They don't care about the brain thrust of the child. They don't care about that. I talked to an administrator, and he said, "Oh yeah, I want that job because I want to be a millionaire before I retire." You're paying them too much to do nothing. But I'm only one man on the school board, and in my state of New Jersey, you need at least five people to overrule a superintendent. And these are things that in our community that we have to educate people about. We can't just get people appointed who are going to be yes men for somebody who's looking out for their financial interests. And that's what the Black Panther Party talked about. When they talk about Social Security and they talk about Medicare, these are socialist programs, but they hate the socialists. How can you hate the socialists when your grandma and grandpa are living off Social Security and Medicare? I don't want to hijack your program, but I became a member of the Black Panther Party during the takeover of Conklin Hall at Rutgers University, and we had to gather Black Panther. We had to gather youth to become members of the Black Panther youth cadre, and from that point, we were educated about the 10-point program and about socialists and thought, and we were educated about a love for the Black community. We weren't Black nationalists; we were revolutionary nationalists, which means that we.
Now, I would like to interrupt you just to make sure that we don't miss the moment. Can you explain two things to this audience? One, about the Rutgers takeover, and two, about revolutionary nationalists. Could you make sure everybody understands both of those?
The Conklin Hall takeover, Rutgers University only had 30 Black students in a body of 4,000 white people within the city of Newark. The city of Newark at that time, population was 60% Black and 40% white. We had a white vigilante organization, which was called the North Ward First Aid Squad, led by Tony Imperiali. And that was the White Citizens Council on the East Coast. So this guy went up and down the East Coast to say that, Blacks were taking over cities and they were becoming the majority. When the students led by Joe Brown, who was the chairman of the NAACP student chapter at Rutgers University, the first thing he did was he said, no, just like Stokely Carmichael got on top of that fort and said, we are for Black power. Joe Brown said, hey, we are for Black power, and we are going to change the name of this student organization to the Black Organization of Students. So secretly, they went around, got some chains, got some locks, and they locked themselves inside Conklin Hall at Newark Rutgers University. The Newark Police Department was ready to storm the building, but the chancellor at that time said, no, I don't want any bloodshed, because previously in 1967, Newark had a rebellion. And in that rebellion, they were rebuilding from the rebellion. So, change was slow to happen. You see, that's the difference between most civil rights organizations, because they like to request. The Black Panther Party demanded. And that's what the 10-point program was about. It was about demanding things. So when the 13 Black students locked themselves inside Conklin Hall, they changed the name to Liberation Hall. And there was a 7-day negotiation period because the Black students also left people out to negotiate. Thing is that as we negotiated with the university, we also needed community support. Now, I was a high school student at the time, and the Black Panther Party needed people to protect the students And because they had, students came with a telephone pole. They were gonna ram the door. The white students were gonna ram the door because they said, oh no, you're depriving us of education. And I said, well, we're being deprived of a lot more than just education. We live in America and we are deprived of a lot of things. But one of the things is that because this university is built on land that was not really theirs, from the Lenape Indians to the black dwellers, city dwellers that used to live in those tenements that used to cover the university. So, we formed a line and we told them they can't cross that line. And of course, the police department is willing to cross that line because they were more armed than we were. But we were also armed at that particular time, because at that particular time, the Black Panther Party for Self-Defense was in existence, and the mayor and the chancellor said he had the final word, and the governor said he had the final word because it was a state university, and they said they would rather negotiate rather than occupy the building. Unlike Jackson State, unlike a lot of universities that suffered at the hands of National Guard and police force. So we eventually came to an agreement and created a program that would allow Black students into the university. I'm sorry, what was the second question?
Second question was about the revolutionary term that you used.
Oh, revolutionary, yeah, that revolutionary, yes, revolutionary nationalism. At that particular time, the 1967 war in Palestine, the Yom Kippur War, the Vietnam War. This country is always at war with somebody, and particularly people of color. And we felt that, solidarity is based on revolutionary thought, and that we considered ourselves revolutionary nationalists at that particular time because the Black Power movement was going on. But we had to also educate Black people to create solidarity. And one of our champions of solidarity was Fred Hampton. And he became so popular, there was even consideration to put him on a national scale until his assassination. But revolutionary events were going all over the country, with the Vietnamese winning their revolution, the continent of Africa was colonialized, and they had to get all the neo-colonialists out of Africa. And as you can see now, the United States and the French still are meddling in Africa. But the only ones that come forward, and particularly at that time, was South Africa. And we had to support Nelson Mandela. We had to support those African revolutionaries that were going on at that particular time, which means that it was a global situation. Excuse me. This is the reason why I promote the book, Blacks Against the Empire, which was written by two Californian educators. Joshua Bloom and Waldo Martin were their names. You want to write that down, Blacks Against Empire. And that pretty much 99% tells the story of the Black Panther Party. Because we were the only Black organization that took on the American empire. We had a headquarters in Algeria, which was run by Eldridge Cleaver and Kathleen Cleaver. And brought people from the international spectrum of Africa and, and promoted African solidarity, because a lot of African countries were under neo-colonial rule or colonial rule at the time. Uh-oh. I think you're on mute. I can't hear you.
Oh, I'm sorry, I had my mic on off. I was commending you on your contribution. I said it was extremely helpful. And I would greatly appreciate if you would not mind putting your contact information in the chat, at least an email address, because you are a resource that I think we should all continue to contact and communicate with further after tonight. So if you would not mind, I would appreciate you putting your email in the chat. Yes,
Okay,
sir.
I'll
I
do
see
that.
another hand. Let's go. I'm ready to hear it.
Okay, this Masai again. And
Yes.
just to follow up a little bit, since Atno just finished speaking, I should say, like, in terms of like, in some of y'all spoke on it before, like I said, when I came back from the military, I had already been part of those rebellions that had taken place in 67 and 63 when I went into the Marines. So when I came back, part of the motivation was like, why are we going somewhere else to fight? And I knew the conditions that was happening in Jersey. I should say, like, when Atno speak, one of the things when I mentioned about the Jersey chapter, it was their chapter over there where I kind of got involved in it first. And he didn't mention the things like when the office was over there, like the fire bombing and all that. And those were some of the things that even led to, like, sometimes the change of names of certain things, but the people would still be there. But it was a constant, actually, military attack. So there was, like he said, there was a lot of things going on there, a lot of people there. That's also where, like, even though I had met some folks while in the military, it was like in the office over in North, that international solidarity that he's talking about, it was actually working with real revolutionaries from another place. That's also why sometimes, like what I'm talking about, the BPP or under or whatever, but people spoke on it already, because I don't bring up some stuff sometimes until they bring it up. But yeah, and that's what I meant when he talked about the educational thing before. That's what I meant about even like law students, because at one time they were more actually involved in the community. And I think that's very, very important that they know our history, our story, because it affects how they work and where they're coming from. So I just wanted to say that while I had the opportunity, but that was one of the branches over there. And there's a lot of people that came out of that Jersey office that folks don't even know. Some of them didn't even know the work that they really, really did when you talk about giving up. So I got the comment on that, and that's it. That's it.
Well, I thank you all so much. I really appreciate y'all sharing so freely. Everybody's been texting and putting messages that we need to start a Facebook community, a book club, some type of therapy group. So maybe we have inspired something, but I tell you all, this has been far past what we ever imagined. And I am so thankful to Balsa for the leadership in organizing this, and for everybody chiming in and making sure that we did not leave with gaps open. We hope now that everybody walks away from here feeling that if the Panthers did their part, we have to pick up the mantle and do our part. You know, we can't just sit back and assume the work will be done by someone else. So I thank everyone. I look forward to seeing you all on tomorrow, if possible, and for us to continue this dialogue, perhaps in a different forum. So let's start brainstorming about how to keep this conversation alive. Thank you all. Good night, everybody.
All power to the people.
Much.
All power to the people.
All power.
Power to the people.
Power to the people.